Before we get started, YouTube analytics shows that only 18% of my viewers are subscribed to the channel and we're very close to 100,000 subs. Subscribing is free and helps me out immensely, so please know it's very appreciated. I hope you enjoy the video. A few days ago, I decided to go to Walmart to pick up a few things. That day, I was wearing a bright dress with sunflowers printed on it. My hair was down, and it's a bright blonde color. As I was shopping, I went down the international aisle to grab some mirin. As I walked, I felt like someone was watching me. I stopped in front of the shelves stocked with different sauces and condiments, scanning for mirin when a man came so close to me that I had to look at him. The moment our eyes met, he smiled and said, "Hi, how are you?" I instantly felt uneasy. I didn't say anything, gave a polite smile, and walked away. There was no specific reason the man made me uncomfortable. He seemed fine at first glance. He looked like he was in his early to mid-30s, maybe a few inches taller than me, around 5'8". He had brown hair, a dirty orange cutoff shirt, and brown boots, which made me think he worked in construction. But who knows? All I know is that he gave off a strange vibe I couldn't explain. After walking away, I went to the opposite end of the store and kept looking around to see if he was nearby. For the next 20 minutes, he was nowhere to be found, so I thought I'd overreacted. I eventually made my way to the checkout area. Once I got there, I saw him standing near the refrigerators by the checkout lanes, staring at me. He was holding just one item. After we made eye contact, he walked towards the self-checkout area. I immediately turned around and joined the longest line I could find, hoping to wait him out. It took about 20 minutes to get through the line. When I finally finished, I dragged my feet on my way out, making sure he wasn't inside the store. Seeing no sign of him, I started walking faster once I got outside. I began convincing myself that I was being irrational. After all, he wasn't unattractive, and he hadn't done anything overtly dangerous. Maybe I was just overthinking it. As I walked to my car, I noticed a brown worker's truck near the exit. It began driving slowly around the parking lot after I stepped out of the store. At the time, I didn't think much of it. I assumed the man had already left and just wanted to get to my car quickly since it was raining. I finished packing my trunk when the same truck pulled into the spot diagonally across from mine. It then slowly moved into the spot directly next to my car, so that its driver's side was right next to mine. I heard the man's voice say, "Excuse me," as I opened my car door. I quickly slid into the driver's seat, hoping he'd think I didn't hear him. I locked the door, started the car, and put it in reverse. But before I could back out, the truck pulled forward and stopped diagonally behind my car, blocking me in completely. I looked ahead and realized there was another car parked in front of me, so driving forward wasn't an option either. I turned to look at the man and saw him sitting in his truck with the window rolled down. I rolled down mine slightly and asked, "What's up?" in a sharp tone. He said, "I just saw you in the store, and you are absolutely so beautiful. I just had to tell you." "Thank you," I replied, praying he wouldn't get out of his truck. "I couldn't let myself walk away without asking for your number so I can take you out," he continued. I held up my hand, showing him my wedding ring, and said, "I'm married." Before he could respond, I rolled up my window and stared at the steering wheel, avoiding eye contact. After what felt like an eternity, I heard his truck move. The moment he cleared the way, I sped out of there. Maybe the guy had good intentions and maybe he was genuine. But the heavy, dark feeling I got told me something wasn't right. So to the man at Walmart who blocked me into my parking spot to ask me out, let's not meet again. A little backstory. When I was 19, I lived with my mom in a ranch-style house on a road that backed up to a large field. On the other side of the field was the main highway. About half a mile down the road was a strange farmer, and about a mile in the other direction was pretty much a crack house. I think someone used to live there, but by this time it was completely run down. To be fair, the crackheads were usually pretty quiet. Other than those two houses, we were pretty isolated. At the time, I was working full-time and going to school full-time. One of my classes ended at 10:30 at night, so I would not get home on that day of the week until about 11:15. One night as I was driving home, I noticed a man walking down the road. He was wearing a bright yellow shirt and track pants. I remember his outfit because it looked ridiculous. Seeing people walking down my road was not unusual because of the whole crack house situation, but I instinctively glanced at him as I drove past. He turned, smiled, and waved. It freaked me out. I sped the half-mile home, pulled into the driveway, and sat there for a moment, unsettled. After going inside, I made sure all the doors and windows were locked, then sat on the couch, feeling paranoid. I decided to wait and make sure the guy walked past the house. Except he didn't. Instead, he showed up in my driveway with another guy. The second man was dressed in darker clothes. They started messing with my car, pulling on the door handles like they were trying to get in. My heart sank when I realized I had left my phone in the car in my rush to get inside. Then the guy in the yellow shirt began walking toward the front door. I panicked and ran to wake up my mom. She was groggy and I was trying to explain what was happening when we both heard the doorknob turning very slowly. Thank God it was deadbolted. My mom got out of bed and went to the door. Then the man knocked. I perched on the couch to get a better look at him and his friend, who was still standing in the driveway. The porch light was on because of the motion sensor. "Yeah?" my mom asked through the door. "You dropped your wallet," the man in the yellow shirt said. I told my mom that I had my wallet with me. It was in my purse. So she calmly told him that she had her wallet and that it was too late at night to be knocking on people's doors. I remember perfectly what he said next, even though this happened 6 years ago. "Okay, I'm not a bad guy, just so you know." Everything went still. No one moved, not me, not my mom, not the guy at the door. Even the man in the driveway didn't move. The porch light eventually clicked off, plunging the area into darkness. Then the man at the door tried the handle again. My mom told me to call the police while she went to get her gun. I told her I didn't have my phone because it was in the car. She walked to the kitchen, grabbed her phone from the charger, handed it to me, and then went to the bathroom to look out the window into the backyard. When she came back, she had a Ruger in hand and told me, "There's one in the backyard too." It clicked then why she had gone to the bathroom. She must have seen someone from the kitchen window and wanted to get a better look. I was on the phone with the police explaining that there were 2 men in our driveway and now a third one in the backyard. Meanwhile, my mom walked back to the door and loudly said, "If he tries the handle again, I'm just going to open the door and shoot him." To this day, I don't know why she said that instead of just waiting for the police, but it seemed to work. The men bolted down the road. I told her and she rushed to the bathroom. Sure enough, the man in the backyard saw his friends running and took off in the same direction, toward the crack house. When the police arrived, they searched our house and yard. Then they went to the crack house where they found 5 men hanging around. One of them was the guy in the yellow shirt, and I am guessing his friends were with him. They were all arrested. Nothing like that ever happened again, but I was on edge for a long time. Even now, years later, I always make sure the doors are locked, though I live in a much nicer area now. Anyway, sorry this was a bit anticlimactic. The men were caught and that was the end of it. But to the weird guys who claimed I dropped my wallet, let's not meet. This was an experience I had alongside my best friend in high school. This was about 2006, maybe 2007, in rural upstate New York. We met in 3rd grade and are still friends to this day. Let me give you some background information now. My friend B and I became instant friends when we met in 3rd grade and were inseparable. We frequented each other's homes so much that her mom set up her guest room as my room. I had toys, clothes, pictures, everything I needed was there. I was family. Pictures of B and me hung on the walls of the home owned by her very proud mother, Shelley. Shelley always wanted 2 daughters and loved me so much that she considered me her second daughter. Now on to the meat of the story. Again, this incident took place when B and I were sophomores in high school. Her mother was divorced and dated a few different men, meeting some on sites like eHarmony. She had been speaking to a man for a few weeks, gushing about how manly and charming he was. She was really excited and always showed us their profiles before she decided to go on an actual date with one of these men. She always would say, "I need my daughter's stamps of approval." One night she called us to her room and showed us this man she had been talking all about. His profile was simple, as one would imagine for a middle-aged man in 2007 on eHarmony. The headline read, "Looking for a strong mother." I made a joke about his odd placement for caps and just how strange a way to start out. But we moved forward. It told of his metalwork background, his love of cold steel, and his work in a foundry that kept his icy heart just warm enough. I was honest and told her it sounded off, but he was handsome. Sporting black, well-groomed hair, a beard, strong jaw, ice blue eyes, and a relatively fit body for a 40-something-year-old male. I did stress the weird vibe, then B joked how Shelley always picked out the antisocial ones, and we laughed knowing this wasn't wrong. Shelley's brought some weird stories home, but what do you expect when meeting men online? We told her to go for it, so they planned on dinner. It was a haul for him, about a 2-hour drive. He was driving to our location where they would then take one car into town. B and I helped Shelley pick out her outfit, helped her with her hair and makeup, and then went back upstairs so she could have some time to herself before the long night. We headed up the stairs where B and I were painting a wall in her room, just listening to music and cutting up. He just let himself in the house like no big deal, and just came upstairs without saying a word. No knocking, no doorbell. The dogs didn't bark. Nothing. So we got spooked, jumped, screamed, and crapped our pants a little when we heard a man start talking behind us. We didn't know how long he had been in the house. We didn't know how long he stood behind us without speaking. But when he did speak, we shook. Well, I didn't know I was getting a 2-for-1 deal, he said quietly in a gravelly low voice. He chuckled as we stood there in shock of the stranger in her room. He sauntered over to us like a man on a Sunday walk. The smell of cigarettes filled the room, as if Rod Serling himself was standing in the corner explaining our situation to the audience for our own personal episode of The Twilight Zone. Right then I noticed how much this guy looked like the guy in the pictures Shelley showed us, except he had salt and pepper, not jet black hair, and his eyes were not ice blue but black, not brown, black. It looked like this guy was 100% pupil. "Are you—" I was interrupted by Shelley shouting, "Who got hurt?" She must have thought we were horsing around and one of us got hurt. This was normal for us because we goofed around a lot. She was jolted at the sight of this man blocking her from us. He turned around just as soon as she reached the top of the stairs and held his arms out and said, in a way less low tone than he used earlier, "Shelly, you look beautiful." I knocked and no one answered. "I hope it's okay I let myself in. These are your girls. They're beautiful like their mommy." I'll never forget how he said mommy. It felt dirty. B and I both side-eyed each other and stepped down off our stepladders. We were both very in tune with each other. If I felt weird, I knew she did too, and we both felt the odd air of the room. Shelly glanced away from him and at us, who were behind him, looking at her with wide eyes, both kind of shaking our heads side to side in disbelief. Shelly looked back to him. This exchange only took a few seconds, but seemed like an eternity. She forced a smile at him and said, "Oh, I'm sorry. Next time just ring the bell, I'll come open the door." He nodded and walked toward her with open arms, and he hugged her as if they had been the oldest of friends. She looked at us as they hugged and just kind of rolled her eyes to show us what she thought of his excuse. She proceeded to tell him that it was not appropriate as she led him down the stairs, and we heard him apologize over and over. B and I instantly ran to our phones. We agreed to text her mom what he had just said to us so we could tell her without him knowing. We hit send, and about 10 minutes later, we heard footsteps up the stairs. It was Shelly, and she shut the door behind her, asking if we were okay. She hugged us and told us she was sorry he made us feel uncomfortable. She explained that he said we reminded him of his girls and didn't mean to scare us. We nodded, and then she said they were leaving out for the date. We hugged her, said be safe, and we would see her soon. As she headed down the stairs, B and I looked at each other. We both knew that something was not right, but we were both speechless from the good scare we received from this dark man just about 15 minutes prior. We heard them walking and talking, heading towards the front door a few minutes later. Shelly shouted up the stairs that she loved us. We yelled back that we loved her, and then the door shut. We instantly started talking over each other, saying the same things. B spoke over me. "He laid that charm on so thick as soon as he saw Mom," B exclaimed further. "And did you see his eyes? What the hell was that? He looks so much like the guy from the pictures, but not exactly." We both concurred on our feelings about the stranger. His scent, his demeanor, his voice. He was like something out of a classic stranger danger advert. Again, we agreed to text Shelly how we felt. She thanked us and told us it seemed to be going well, and she would let us know that she was safe every hour. B and I were just freaked out, even more so that Shelly was not. It was like a weird spell he cast on her. It was odd, but we wanted to think the best for Shelly as she was excited about this guy. She texted us every hour until she got home. Her last text said, "I'm okay, but officially freaked out and coming home now, be home soon." We got freaked and paced around until we saw headlights pull into the driveway. It had been about 5 hours since she left and about an hour since that last text. We were inside with the lights off, watching through the side window, trying not to be seen when the motion sensor light flooded the yard and the light fell onto the driveway. A truck flew into the driveway. The passenger side door flung open before the truck was at a full stop, and Shelly's feet were on the pavement just as fast. She waved at the driver and kind of jogged to the door wide-eyed. She reached the front door, turned, and waved the truck off. She had her house key ready in the hand she wasn't waving with. She unlocked the door and slid inside the safety of the house. "Keep the lights off, let's go upstairs," Shelly said as she locked the 2 deadbolts in the chain, not once looking at us. We headed up the stairs behind her. We walked into B's room and looked out the window down to the truck, still in park out front with the lights on and engine running. As we all stared at the truck, Shelley told us of the ordeal she went through. Long story short, he had made reservations at the wrong restaurant, so he suggested they go buy some food and have a picnic-style dinner at a local park. Shelley didn't do well outdoors. She was an office woman, so she declined. However, he had just driven so long to get here, and then hit her with, "You kind of owe me," and Shelley said that made her feel bad knowing he drove 2 hours. So when he mentioned that he had a vacation home where he could cook for her close by, she agreed. She said they got to the house and it was nice enough. A log cabin near Bethel, New York, only about 35 minutes from our town. Shelley said he kept talking about how easy it was to get her alone. He also kept saying he liked strong mommies because they have such fight, but she caved. This made her skin crawl. This wasn't the man she thought it was. This also wasn't the man in the picture, and Shelley started to slowly realize this. Shelley then said she asked for a ride home due to her feeling ill. He wasn't the happiest, but he complied and stopped cooking and started looking for the keys she knew he had in his pocket. He then started asking her about our girls, referring to myself and B. This freaked Shelley out so bad she said she was going to get someone to get her and that he didn't like. He found his keys instantly. Once they were out of the house and in the truck would not start, so they had to move to his work truck. Shelley was visibly shaken and wouldn't take her eyes off the truck in the driveway as she spilled the story out post-haste. She said there was a garage that he said they had to walk around the house to hop into the work truck. She felt she had no choice but to play it cool and just agree to go. She hopped out and walked around the house, and there indeed was another garage with a truck in it. The same truck that we were all currently staring at just sitting in the driveway. It smelled like bleach and metal, Shelley whispered. She told us on the way home he just kept asking about us. What did we do that she didn't like? What got us spankings? What were the naughty things we got in trouble for? What would she do without us? And the one question to scare you out of your pants as a parent. Would you sacrifice yourself for our girls? Shelley said she stared at him in awe and disbelief, and then he just laughed. She got more and more concerned as she noticed her surroundings in the back of the truck she was riding home in. There were what she thought were chains and a bucket sitting on a desk that was drilled into the floor, a duffel bag, and very large metal objects she wasn't too sure of. This is when he started to pull out pictures on his little flip phone that he had of us. He must have found Shelley's Facebook and took pictures of our pictures, showing them to Shelley and telling her what a good, strong mommy she had been to us, and how she should be proud of what she had accomplished. By this time, they were pulling into the driveway, and Shelley was done with his nonsense. She was just about finished when we saw the truck lights turn off. Shelley immediately picked up the phone and dialed the sheriff and told him quickly there was an unwelcome person outside our home. Being in such a small town, the sheriff not only went to school with and graduated with Shelley, but he only lived 3 doors down. Just as we saw this guy getting out of his truck with the duffel bag, we saw the sheriff whip up behind him. This man panicked and literally threw his duffel into his truck and tried to back into the sheriff to get out. When he realized he was blocked from the rear, he went through the yard. We could not believe our eyes. The truck peeled out, taking some of the lawn with it. The sheriff came to the door to check on us and told us he had the units down the road waiting for him. We all shared a good collective cry and rejoiced in our safety. It did, however, create some paranoia issues in the next couple of weeks due to the fact we didn't know how long he was in the house when he just let himself in. Did he put cameras anywhere? Did he mess with food in the house to hurt someone? I mean, it was bad, but we worked through it. We never heard anything about him getting caught. And we did occasionally receive eerie messages on Facebook, 2 of which we knew were from him. But we put that out of our minds. Haven't heard anything from or about him since about 3 months after the incident when the last message was received. It's been about 11 years since the incident, but we still talk about it when we can. So, old dude from eHarmony, let's never meet again. Ever again. Long-time lurker, first-time poster. Seeing so many people share their stories has also inspired me to come forth with a tale of my own. First, a little scene setting, and bear with me because this intro's a bit long. It was the start of summer 2011, and I was in the middle of working towards my associate's degree. I was poor and going to a community college at the time, taking summer classes to get my degree faster. Not even 2 weeks into the course, I was already swamped with homework and eager to get this damn organic chemistry course over with because it was a mess the first time I tried. I ended up dropping the course when I took it in the fall and waited until the summer to take it over. It didn't help that where I lived the summers got very hot and humid fast due to the lake effect weather, and the college I attended didn't have very good AC either because of the building's age. To save money and because I didn't have my own car yet, I took the bus to and from my classes. Now, doing this was a bit of an involved trip. I lived in the suburbs nearby and ended up taking a bus from the pretty safe suburbs to the main station downtown, where I would wait 15 to 20 minutes for my next bus, and then take that bus over to the college. The whole trip took about 45 minutes to an hour, give or take, since the bus terminal was always packed solid. My book bag slung over one shoulder and my backpack on my back. I was kind of dwarfed. I'm not a large woman, and at the time I weighed maybe 115 pounds, standing a grand total height of about 5'3". I'm also pretty quiet most of the time, even though I have a pretty loud voice and can turn on the waterworks if I want to, owing to being in high school theater for 4 years. I looked sort of like an unassuming, confused, glasses-wearing high schooler trying to attend college with the big kids and was often mistaken for one. I think a lot of people realize this because I always had people trying to be extra nice or help me do things. I met a lot of really nice, great people on the buses and had some interesting conversations with many of them. Even some of the homeless people near the bus station were pretty nice folks, and I always felt bad they were down on their luck. I was also raised by a mother who unfortunately had dealt with very sketchy types before and didn't get out unscathed. She had been assaulted as a teen and was always extra paranoid about me being out alone as her eldest daughter. She would always tell me to trust my instincts, that they'd never steer me wrong, and that if I ever had to run for it, I should scream and make as big a scene as possible to draw attention. In retrospect, I am very glad she did so because even though I always felt safe downtown, I knew that bad things could always happen to good people for no reason. So, back to the start of my summer 2011 Orgochem class. I had successfully completed the first half of my trip downtown and was waiting inside the main station where it was much cooler. The weather had to have been about 80 degrees Fahrenheit, so I was dressed in some torn-up capri shorts I'd doodled on in high school, some nice open-toed sandals, and a tank top. Fairly casual wear. The bus terminal had these 2 areas of metal benches situated towards large windows on either side of the ticket booth so you could watch the buses coming and going. And there was an attached Greyhound station towards the back, past the bathrooms and food court area. There were plenty of people and security about, so I didn't think anything of asking the security guard to keep an eye on my backpack for me while I used the restroom. I also didn't think much of it when a nicely dressed businesswoman in open-toed pumps, looking very hurried, brushed past me on the way there in a way that bordered on rude. It was like she was trying to get out of the area quickly, but she looked really busy and I figured she was about to be late and just didn't notice me there, so I didn't bother asking. Maybe I should have. It could have saved me some grief later. I went into the restroom, did my business, washed my hands, and left. You know that feeling that everyone keeps telling you about in these stories? The feeling like a cold prickle on the back of your neck, like someone's staring at you. I got that feeling coming out of the restroom, but looking around, I couldn't really pinpoint who exactly was staring me down. It was a busy terminal, and the Greyhound section of the station was particularly packed. After looking about for a bit and moving around, I noticed a dude in a red polo shirt for some local grocery chain and a ball cap to match. He was scrawny and looked a bit tweaky, dark-skinned with curly graying hair, yellow eyes with dark irises, a scraggly 5 o'clock shadow of a beard, and the most hideous teeth I have ever seen. Literally, this man's mouth breathed decay and grossness. Normally, none of that would bother me. Plenty of the local homeless looked scruffy and nasty too, and they were always generally nice people. But something about this guy really set me off. He seemed to be looking at me too. Really odd. But every so often his eyes would flick towards someone else like he was trying to not be noticed. I got that gut feeling something wasn't right about him and turned to go back to my seat. Unfortunately, at this exact moment the guy apparently noticed me and started to come towards me, just as I was turning around. Freaked out, I quickened my pace and moved through the crowd, weaving and hoping I'd gotten lost. I just didn't want to be alone with this weirdo, and I didn't like that he'd honed in on me like that. Once I was sure I'd lost him, I thanked the security guard at my old seat, grabbed my stuff casually, and moved to the further up section of seats closer to the windows. I sat down relaxed and tried to remain calm. My bus wasn't due for another 10 minutes or so. Cue the weirdo sitting down on the same bench as me. Immediately, red flags went up and I felt a chill hit me. Why the hell was this random guy following me? What did he want? Well, mama didn't raise no fool daughter, and I'd always had good success in calling people out in a crowd to embarrass them. So I looked up and gave this freak as best a death glare as I could muster. "Can I help you?" I said, making my contempt obvious as the guy continued to stare. I just wanted to sit here, The guy had a speech impediment of some sort and didn't sound like he could even speak right through his dentist's nightmare of a mouth. "I'm sorry, do I know you?" I challenged. "I noticed you were looking at me and I thought maybe you knew me somehow." He fell silent for a bit and, feeling silly, thinking maybe he was socially awkward or autistic or something, I let it drop. He kept staring off and on, but then said something that absolutely weirded me out. You have beautiful feet." "Okay, dude, whatever you say." I gave him a confused but polite thank you, figuring he was just some weird foot fetishist who was a little more open than most. Sure, a foot fetishist complimenting my feet was strange, but if he didn't try anything, I wasn't going to make a fuss about it. I didn't respond after that until he brought up my feet again. "Thank you, I like my sandals too," I responded, feeling really awkward now. I moved to the next bench 2 over, figuring he would get the hint once I gave him the cold shoulder, and began feigning working on my homework. He didn't get the hint. In fact, he jumped over to be on the opposite bench facing me and continued trying to speak with me. "Can I touch your feet?" "Okay, nope, red flag, not going there." I felt a lump in my throat. This guy was clearly not just your standard foot fetish weirdo. He was staring at my feet the way a wolf stares at a piece of meat. And at this point I was scared he might do more than touch my feet. Something along the lines of making human boots from them or something. He must have seen my speechlessness as a yes because he leaned down and made for one of my feet as if to grab it. "There's my ride," I blurted, standing up and quickly getting out of his range so he couldn't pull me down or trip me. "Nice talking with you, gotta go, bye." I then made a break for the entrance, hoping to God he wouldn't follow. Of course, my bus wasn't quite there yet. It had a few more minutes before it loaded, and I was hoping he didn't know that and would give up. He didn't give up and instead gave chase because, of course, he did. I got so spooked I speed walked even more, weaving through crowds so he wouldn't nab me. The entrance wasn't that far, it was right there and there were security guards there. Surely they would notice and help, right? No such luck. I managed to get out of the area and into the loading platforms, speed walking towards the loading area where I knew plenty of people were. I wasn't about to let this guy get me alone anytime soon. That's when I heard footsteps behind me, closing in, and I broke into sick, cold sweats. Jesus, this guy would not leave me be, would he? He was a predator. I was sure of that now. He wanted to get me vulnerable, and I wouldn't let him. He caught up and murmured something I wish I had never heard him say. "Excuse me, ma'am. Ma'am, please, excuse me, can I talk next to your feet?" My mind went into overdrive, half panicked as the guy kept perfect pace with my footsteps. There was not a security guard in sight, and the loading platform for my bus had a congregation of people. Think fast. Think fast and you'll be all right. Think fast. If he does anything, then he'll be noticed. "Walk?" I stammered, trying to throw him for a loop. "You want to walk next to my feet? I mean, I guess if you really want to." Yeah, stupid, I know, but I couldn't think straight. My stomach was in knots and I figured if I brought him with me into an area with lots of people, I could find someone who looked tough or intimidating, or at least shame this guy into backing off. That was when the bus pulled into the station. At last. Maybe I could convince the bus driver to let me on early if I told them I was being followed and needed a safe place to hide. Maybe they could get this creep off my tail. I slid into the crowd and the guy followed suit, but much slower, as if hesitant. Sure, he'd back off now. I sat down on one of the concrete planters near another burly-looking passenger. Maybe the creep would think this man was my boyfriend or something and wouldn't come near. No such luck. The creep saw me sit down. Then as soon as he got close, he gestured for me to put my feet up. I was nervous and shook my head, then went to curl my feet under myself so he had no access. That was when he made his move. In horrified, shocked silence, I watched this creepy guy grab one of my ankles, take my sandal off, and then stick my heel in his mouth and start sucking on it sloppily. I wanted to vomit. I wanted to shriek. But for about 5 seconds, I was paralyzed with disbelief and horror that any of this was actually happening to me right now. He kept sucking and I kept telling myself to do something. Kick him, scream, anything. Finally, something clicked, and my mom's reminder to scream as loud as I possibly could came back full force. A wave of revulsion snapped me out of what this creature was doing to me, and I shrieked like a goddamned banshee. I made an incredibly loud noise of disgust and horror, something like a disturbed wailing noise, and I guess he wasn't expecting such a quiet, small, unassuming-looking woman to be that loud or that vehement. He dropped my foot and stumbled back several feet, frightened of the very inhuman noise I had just made. By this point, several people noticed and were looking in his very embarrassed direction. Have I yet mentioned that I swear like a sailor? Because I do. I'm pretty sure I called that guy every manner of obscenity in the book and then some, but I only distinctly remember screaming at him at the top of my lungs, "Get the hell away from me, you creep." Now everyone was looking at me and the guy decided to cut and run like all hell's demons were on his ass. I must have looked pale and scared, because people immediately started asking if I was okay. The bus driver saw everything and let me on early to keep me safe, not letting the doors open for anyone. She didn't even scan my card. There was also a nice, rather attractive guy who helped me on the bus towards the back. This guy was apparently an ex-Marine, so I felt pretty safe with him staying nearby me on the ride to college. I was silent the entire way and terrified, my foot still slick with that creep's disgusting slobber. Fortunately, I never saw the foot creep again, but shortly thereafter I stopped taking the bus and started borrowing my mom's car out of fear for my safety. When I brought it up to my family and told my mom, she pretty much freaked out, contacted the place this guy worked at. He was in work uniform, remember? And contacted the bus terminal to be on the lookout for him. She bought me mace and I carry it with me always. She contacted my uncle, who was a police lieutenant, and he even had some officers dispatched down at the terminal when I did take the bus. That fall, I took a self-defense course with this awesome old guy who taught me pressure points and joint lock holds. It was the best thing I ever did for myself because it boosted my confidence considerably. I'm still friends with the batty old guy, Black Mr. Miyagi as my family calls him. And every so often I see the same bus driver who helped me while I'm around downtown, and I always give them a little wave. I don't know what happened to the heel-sucking foot creep again, and to my knowledge, he was never caught. Several years later, a friend did confirm to me that this guy basically thought of my foot like a vagina, and that his act with licking my foot was about the same as forcibly going down on me. My family and I call the creeper the foot pyre after a random joke my little brother made to cheer me up about the situation. To this day, I still don't take the bus and my family still jokes about this creepy guy I told off. So, ex-Marine and bus driver who helped me out, let's meet again and have a drink sometime. You're the real MVPs. And heel-sucking foot pyre, let's never ever meet again as long as I live. I'm going to warn you now. This story is a bit long and quite a doozy. Grab some popcorn and perk up those ears. This happened about 6 years ago. I'm 27 now. Having said that, I apologize if there are small details missing or that I don't remember. I had gotten out of a 3-year relationship that didn't end particularly well. I didn't want to be one of those girls who made her way through a friend group, if you catch my drift. I wanted a change of scenery. I decided to try my luck on a dating site called OkCupid. I know, terrible idea. I'm well aware of that now, but hindsight is always 20/20. In my mind, most of the dating sites are a cesspool of incels, catfish, or desperate people. To my surprise, I actually went on several decent dates. No red flags, creeper vibes, or weird feelings. Luckily, I made my mom aware of what I was doing, so whenever I'd go on a date, she'd know where I was and when I was going to be home. Mama didn't raise no idiot, right? Wrong. This is when I came across Dennis's profile. He seemed chill, kinda cute, and somewhat interesting, so I sent him a message. He was playful and had a sarcastic sense of humor, right up my alley. I decided to give him a shot. We met at a coffee shop and had some very engaging and interesting conversation. Dennis was 5'9", normal build, balding with reddish hair and glasses. He definitely gave off some nerd vibes. He started off by asking, "What are you looking for?" I gave my normal response. I'm wanting someone who is sweet and caring but also funny and intelligent. Something along those lines, nothing groundbreaking. Cut me some slack, I was young. I realized later that giving this sort of response was the beginning of the end. Dennis and I went on a couple more dates that were unmemorable. I started to fall head over heels for this guy and fast. He was sweet, understanding, caring, empathic, worked out, and took care of himself. He was everything I ever wanted in a guy. It was difficult to understand why he was single. Since I was falling for him so quickly, we agreed that we would be exclusive. Everything was going smoothly until about 2 months into our relationship. That's when crap started to hit the fan. For the last month, I had been pushing him to let me hang out at his place and to meet his roommate, from the suggestion of my parents because they're smart people. Every time I'd push the subject, he'd always make up some excuse on why we can't. My roommate is crazy, it's not a good time for him. He works opposite schedules than me, etc. It was always something. At some point, we had made plans to go out to a club one evening. I was all dressed and ready to go, waiting on him. He ended up not answering his phone for a couple of hours. I realized his phone must have died since whenever I would send him a message, it would never say delivered, for those of you who are Apple users. I ended up deciding to go to his place to see if he would answer his door. I obtained his address at some point, I don't remember how. He lived about 15 minutes from me in an apartment complex, and it was the middle of winter, February. It was freezing cold. I knocked on his door, no answer. While heading back to my car, look who decided to show up. None other than Dennis himself. And guess who he was with? Yes, you're correct. Another woman, which I later found out was his long-term girlfriend, Jessica. I quickly made my way over to him, and the look on his face was priceless. His face deadpanned as soon as he saw me. He whispered something to the girl he was with, and she made her way inside. He came over to me and was speechless at first. I am very surprised to see you here. Really, we had plans, remember? I wanted to see if you were home. I do remember my phone died, so I didn't receive any of your texts and I lost track of time. We were at a friend's birthday party. Who's the girl? My roommate. I thought the guy was your roommate. He is. She's my other roommate and a very good friend. Mind you, I'm a very skeptical person, and alarm bells were definitely going off in my mind, in accordance with my parents' numerous warnings. However, Dennis is the sort of person who is very good at talking himself out of situations. His reasoning behind the decisions he made, why he made them, etc. He was an excellent liar. And being the naive and insecure person I was, I believed him. We ended up going to the club after I waited for him outside in my car for almost an hour. I didn't think too much about it since I was getting what I wanted, and nothing was mentioned about his girl roommate. Over the next month, I kept pushing Dennis to meet his family and his guy roommate. He eventually gave in and brought me to meet his mother. It was an extremely odd experience. We talked about books and some of Dennis's friends, and I made a snide remark about how Dennis's guy roommate was effing nuts. Dennis's words. They both gave me the strangest glances. This would make more sense to me in about a month or so. Eventually, I started to realize that Dennis's stories weren't adding up, and I began to notice inconsistencies in his stories. He would only see me on Tuesday and Thursday evenings because he worked a lot of overtime. He would never be flexible or change his mind, or even allow me to attempt to change his mind. If he was late coming to see me, which started to happen pretty frequently, he would send me screenshots of his work and his work vehicle in line for getting a wash. Or he would send me screenshots of his bathroom, saying he just wanted to freshen up. When I asked for a picture of him in that moment, of him in his bathroom mirror, he declined. He refused to send any pictures of himself proving that he was where he claimed to be. He would also take unusually long bathroom breaks at my house after sex, like 20 or more minutes. Another huge alarm bell. everything came to a head about a month later. I told Dennis that I wanted us to go somewhere with no phone service so that we could truly spend time together without technology being a distraction. He agreed. We ended up making plans to spend 2 or 3 days in Canada. It was still early in our relationship, 4 months, and my mom wanted to make sure I was safe. So she took down Dennis's driver's license and made a copy of it, as well as his license plate. Thank you, Mom. The trip ended up relatively uneventful until the last evening in the hotel room. I'm not sure if it was on purpose or if he was actually asleep, but Dennis ended up rolling over to my side, pulling me in close and saying, "I love you, Jessica." That made my blood run cold. I was so upset. Tears started to blur my vision as I got up out of bed. My parents were right all along. He was a liar and a cheat. Did I break it off? No, of course not. That would make sense. Why would I do that? I was naive and desperately in love with him. I also didn't want to admit it to myself that I had been played or that I was the side chick. So I acted as if nothing was wrong and pretended I didn't hear what he said that night. Of course, that didn't get rid of the aching feeling I had for several weeks. I began to have bad anxiety and panic attacks on my way to school because of the bad feeling in the pit of my stomach. Dennis was constantly lying to me, and I mean constant. It was so bad that I started feeling angry. I let that feeling simmer for a couple of days until I decided to do something about it. When realizing that you were right all along and things weren't just a strange coincidence, it's very bittersweet. On a freezing March day after an exhausting day at school, I wanted to get rid of the nagging feeling in the back of my mind once and for all. I decided to head for Dennis's apartment complex to see if he was still lying to me about living there with his girl roommate. I got out of my car and into the parking lot. I was shaking. I didn't know if it was from anxiety or the anger bubbling below the surface. Was he lying about his girl roommate? You bet your sweet ass he was. I knocked on his door and hid myself from the view of their peephole. He answered the door with his girl roommate behind him. I came from around the corner to look at him with an emotionless face and said, "Wow." I turned on my heels and walked away, only to find out as I got back to my car that I had locked myself out on a cold March day in the middle of winter. I was so distracted by my rage and sadness that I didn't realize I left both my keys and phone in the car. I'm such an idiot. I was beside myself. I didn't know what to do. I locked my phone in the car along with the keys. How the hell do you even do that? I was so angry at myself for being a moron. Not only that, I was in the parking lot of my cheating ex-boyfriend's apartment complex. I wish I was making this up. I really do. With nothing else to lose, literally, I walked back to Dennis's apartment and knocked on their door. Jessica answered, and I begged to use her phone to call AAA. Surprisingly, Jessica agreed and let me use her phone. The entire time, Dennis was agitated, walking around after I got off the phone with AAA. At one point, he even went outside with a coat hanger in an attempt to unlock my car, but to no avail. During that time, I took advantage of being alone with Jessica to get some information out of her, like how long they had been together and where they met. I felt like an auctioneer, shooting 20 questions at her rapid fire before Dennis came back in. By the end of it, I had gathered enough information to prove that Dennis was not who he claimed to be. Everything started to make sense and puzzle pieces began connecting. One of the biggest aha moments for me was when we both talked about being in a relationship with him on Facebook. It turned out this sly bastard created 2 different Facebook accounts to ensure he was in a relationship with us both on each of them, only to block the other girl on that account. This guaranteed that neither of us would come across each other or his other Facebook account. I remember in the beginning, I commented on how his Facebook profile was super limited and didn't have anything on it. He claimed it was only because he used Facebook to befriend coworkers and didn't use it much. Anyway, near the end of our conversation, I tried convincing Jessica that Dennis was a pathological liar and didn't care about her. It was at this point that I realized Jessica could have been aware of everything that Dennis was doing and was either in on it, or was just that naive. I tried texting her after I left their apartment to try and talk some more sense into her, but it was useless. Dennis was with her alone and was a master at skewing and spinning stories. Unfortunately for him, I had one more trick up my sleeve. Over the course of the next week, I spent my remaining few free hours, if I wasn't studying or working, gathering evidence against Dennis. I did research on Dennis and Jessica through Google, but mostly through Facebook. This is the scary part about Facebook if you don't have your privacy settings locked. I found out who Jessica's parents were and decided to send them a message through Facebook with all the evidence I had collected over the past week and a half against Dennis, ensuring that they would believe me in my story. When I say evidence, I mean photos of him and me, screenshots of conversations we had through text, and pictures of him and me. All of these pictures, texts, and conversations had timestamps to show that he was seeing me at the same time he was seeing Jessica, hoping they wouldn't write me off as some crazy ex-girlfriend or psycho. Wishful thinking, am I right? The message is long, so grab your second bucket of popcorn. Here it is verbatim from the original post that I sent several years ago. I've changed some information to protect my privacy and the privacy of others. Hello, insert Jessica's mom's name. My name is X, and I thought there was something you should know. Your daughter is being lied to by her current boyfriend, Dennis. I met him on an online dating site, OkCupid, and we spent the last 5 months together. But Dennis ended up lying to me about his life and everything about it. I doubt your daughter knows the extent to which she has been lied to. I feel it is only right for me to share the information I have collected with you so that it may be brought to your daughter's attention, and so he can no longer get away with this type of behavior. Dennis is not who he says he is or appears to be, and has lied about many aspects of his life. Let me explain. Note, for most of the information I provide today, I also have pictures as evidence, and for your convenience to back up what I have to say, I will mention each time when a picture can be paired with the information provided. First and foremost, a breakdown of the Dennis I learned about while dating him for 5 months. Full name Dennis redacted. Phone number redacted, address redacted. Dennis's mother's address redacted. Workplace redacted, including details of his work schedule as well as him working alternate weekends. Exact vehicle description with distinguishing features, with 2 distinguishing decals on the back window. Picture provided. License plate number redacted. As stated previously, I met Dennis on OkCupid, an online dating site, in early November. His online name was redacted. Picture provided, which is also the same online name he uses for Flickr. We dated for 5 months until I found out that he lied to me about his living conditions and the fact that he also had another girlfriend, your daughter. I have several pictures showing that Dennis and I were together as a couple. He also had several Facebook accounts, pictures provided. One account he called a work Facebook in which he was in a relationship with me, and another account in which he was in a relationship with your daughter. His work Facebook account no longer exists since he deleted it, but I was able to take pictures of it before it was deleted to prove what I am saying. Before continuing, I should mention that I have met your daughter twice. The first time was very brief, and Dennis told me that she was only a good friend and they had just gotten back from hanging out with friends' name at Dave & Buster's for his birthday. Pictures provided. This was back in early January. The second time meeting her was for a longer period at the beginning of March. I ended up going to Dennis's apartment to see if he was lying to me about still living at the apartments. He was. I ended up knocking on their door to find Dennis answering it and to see your daughter standing behind him. Jessica mentioned to me how she and Dennis had been dating for almost 4 years. I was also made aware of another Jessica. Her name is Jessica W. He dated not too long before he started dating me. Pictures provided. This Jessica has also sent me texts mentioning that there may be a possibility of him seeing other women aside from your daughter and Jessica. A different Jessica. Pictures provided. I will attach separate files with all of the photos I have collected. They will be in the order in which they are mentioned in this letter to you. I hope this information is of use to you, and I hope I was able to help in proving that Dennis is not who he says he is, and for you not to be fooled like I was. Thank you very much for your time. Sincerely, X. I did end up receiving a reply from her mother the following morning. However, this post is already long enough, and I will post the responses if anyone is interested. The last time I heard from Dennis was a message. He decided to leave in the grass in my backyard. It was a dead rabbit with its head cleanly cut from its body. It was clear a human did it since there was no sign of blood, and the head was cleanly cut off. My family and I reported it to the police in case any escalation happened. Luckily, nothing did. Unfortunately, Dennis was smart enough not to take it any further, but it was clear he was very angry. He didn't want to leave any sort of trail, through the internet or paper, implying that he did it. Anyway, if you've stuck around this long, I thank you for your time. This took quite a while for me to write since there was way more drama than what I have mentioned above, and I have no desire to relive this experience again. My method of madness is to get my story out there so that anyone reading or listening can know that your feelings are valid, and to listen to your gut. Ladies and gents, please be mindful and careful of who you become close with. The stories you hear on TV about people living 2 separate lives, or this wasn't the person I knew, are very much real, and they exist right under your nose. And to Dennis, screw you and screw your empty apology. I feel sorry that Jessica had to deal with your dumbass as long as she did. You're only sad that you got caught. I hope karma plants you right on your ass. To all the ladies he has messed with, I hope you're okay and that he hasn't dashed too much of your confidence. He's a lowlife, and that's all he'll ever be. Thanks for listening. Take care, friends, and be careful.